Hello, everybody, and welcome to Talent Smart EQ's Emotional Intelligence for Your Everyday Life. I'm so excited to have everybody with us today. While you are all getting comfortable and set up, please, over on the right side of your screen in the comment section, just tell us where you're coming from, where you're at, what you do, or anything like that. We'd love to know where you're coming from. Well, everybody is getting settled. I'm going to go ahead and ask where my guests are coming from before I do some introductions, because we have a great conversation today. We're excited to talk about how emotional intelligence is being so effective in the healthcare industry. But I know two of our guests from outside are from the same area. Amy, Oliver, where are you coming from?
Yeah, I'm in Birmingham, Alabama, from Children's of Alabama.
Excellent, excellent. And Jasmine, are you also in Birmingham?
I am. At Children's of Alabama in Birmingham.
Awesome. Yeah, I wasn't sure if you were in actual Birmingham or not. And Amy Wolf, where are you calling from?
I'm coming from Charlotte, North Carolina.
Charlotte, North Carolina. Excellent, excellent. Well, thank you. I see some people joining us right now, which is excellent. As we get started, I know many of you who've been watching this program for coming up on 2 years now. I just want to remind you that Talent Smart, we are the world's premier provider of emotional intelligence, both assessments and programs around the world. We're based in San Diego, California. I am David Brzozowski. I am the Senior Director of Training and Delivery Operations, and I'm based in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Some of us are around the country, like Amy, you heard as well. But why don't I go ahead and get started and introduce you to the guests that we have today. And let me start off with Amy Wolf. Amy happens to be Client Solutions Vice President here at Talent Smart. She works with our clients that are headquartered mainly in the southeastern part of the United States, based out of Charlotte, as we said. And really, Amy's job, I mean, is it fair to say, Amy, to connect organizations with emotional intelligence to help kind of with any of their specific needs, like to fit EQ into the mold. Is that a fair assessment?
That's exactly right. I love to hear what everybody's doing and just recommend pathways that we have available to them.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. Appreciate that. We have another Amy with us too. We have Amy Oliver. She is the fabulous organizational development consultant at Children's of Alabama. And Amy, I didn't even realize this, that you had joined Children's back in 2016, managing one of the primary care offices before joining the organizational development team in 19, which is that's a cool journey to get there. I know that your favorite part of your job is working with managers to set people up for success. I mean, I met Amy and Jasmine, who I'm going to introduce here in a second as well, about a year ago. And I know that your passion truly is about helping others. But welcome to you, Amy Oliver.
Very, very glad to be here.
Thank you. And we also have Jessamine Smith, who is the Director of Nursing at Children's of Alabama. You joined even earlier than Amy did, 2005, I believe. You were a new graduate nurse. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And she was just a youngin' out of school. She's also a nurse educator, various schools. I know that you teach around Birmingham. And you, like Amy, just have a passion for mentoring and helping others. So this has been a perfect journey, it sounds like, for you all. So welcome to you as well, Jessamine.
Thank you. Thank you, David.
And again, as you're joining us, let us know where you're joining so we know where you're calling in from. But let's go ahead and get started. And I want to start out with Amy Wolf from Talent Smart, because I think what's cool to just kind of ask the question. So you've been with us it's coming up on 3 years now, right, Amy?
That's right. Yeah.
So we work with a lot of different healthcare professionals. How important overall have you seen emotional intelligence in this specific field?
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, David. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
It's my first LinkedIn Live. So
I know, I'm excited.
So Talent Smart works with clients from all over the globe in all industries. But if you look at, how that segments out, about 20% of our clients are from the healthcare industry. And that can include healthcare payers, providers, and vendor partners, all kind of lump into that category. And the reason why we see such a large percentage of our clients from the healthcare field is because emotional intelligence is an absolutely critical skill in that environment. And I think it's because of two reasons. Number one, it improves patient care. And number two, it improves career satisfaction. And so let's dig into that. Let's just double click for a second. So in regards to patient care, emotional intelligence skills allow people to really tune in to the emotions of their patients. And that helps them really serve their needs and ultimately builds trust. And what's nice about it is that every single hospital sends out a survey when people check out to their patients. And of those questions, there's 25 of them, 16 of them directly relate back to emotional intelligence skills.
Oh,
so,
wow. That's cool.
Yeah. So it's very important that hospitals and clinics and healthcare providers get this right when it comes to emotional intelligence. So that's the patient care side of things. And then the career satisfaction side of things, we really want to help prevent burnout and just, it's a high stress environment. We want to help people manage their emotions when they're spread really thin. And so there was actually a study with 110 doctors and 3,000 patients that found that doctors that are high in emotional intelligence skills had greater job satisfaction and were significantly less likely to experience burnout. So that's why emotional intelligence is so important in the healthcare field specifically.
Yeah, wow, that's pretty powerful too. I mean, I think about the pressure that anybody in healthcare is going through, but I think those numbers really help us. Thank you, some of you I see joining us, Karen in Detroit and Bob in York, and Will, who's going to be a guest of mine the next time. Thank you for joining from Minneapolis, and Rasan, thank you very much as well. Keep on letting us know where you're from. Yeah, those numbers are important. So I want to go over to our other Amy, Oliver from Children. So about a year ago is when I had this pleasure of coming and certifying 6 people at Children's of Alabama. That's a commitment to be able to certify 6 people within. And I'm just wondering, so as you all were making that decision about bringing emotional intelligence into the fold there, what was in that decision, at first about that? If you think about, how did you sit down with the amazingly incredible Alice, who is your boss, and come to a decision to say, yep, EQ, but also this program is what we need to actually have?
Yeah. So originally, the original kind of origin story was that we were trying to implement some new DEI education and really saw emotional intelligence as the foundation for those skills of interacting and working and caring for and working through conflict with people who are different than you. And we had kind of a homegrown emotional intelligence class that we had written 20 plus years ago, probably, but really wanted something robust and strong that we could deliver to our people that was engaging and exciting for them. And so, landed on Talent Smart was a great option for us. And like David said, he came in and certified 6 of us. And so we have been rolling it out across the organization since then. And we've kind of done it separately from that DEI original plan as well. So because like Amy Wolf, there are so many fantastic applications and ways that we see it impact both patient care and employees that it just was a no-brainer for us.
Yeah. And I love that decision, right? Like that you have to think about where does it fit? Because you can't just bring EQ for the sake of bringing EQ. Because I think, Amy Wolf, you even said the same thing. It's like, how do I help an organization understand where it fits into the bigger picture? Because emotional intelligence can truly be this grounding for so many other solutions. Jessamine, I can still remember also you being part of this team before, but what I appreciated so much about what you brought to the table from your perspective as Director of Nursing Support Services, and also Erica, who hopefully she's out there listening, Director of Social Work, you're kind of being right on the ground. Your viewpoint was very different than those of us who work in the learning and development standpoint. So can you recall your kind of initial thought of like when Amy and Alice or whoever you started hearing about we're bringing emotional intelligence here, what you were thinking about bringing that to the masses, since you work right there on the floor with all these people who are probably going to get the most use out of this?
Right. I'm very excited to be a part of it. When it was brought to me, we had kind of been, Amy and I separately dealing with some of the, where we were going to go with DEI and, the foundational things. And then when emotional intelligence was brought to my attention, or I was invited to be a part of this group, very excited about the opportunity for not only me as a leader, but for those who would be coming after me, some of the bedside nurses and things that we would be training. Because like you said, EQ is so important to how we care for patients. It's good for us to be able to communicate with each other, but patients are our ultimate goal, and we deal with little people. So, we're dealing with the emotional intelligence of kids and of the parents that we interface with. It's very important, and I was super excited and still am very excited about EQ.
Yeah, and that's such a great point, because your patients are kids. Mm-hmm. But your patients are also the kids' parents. Like, just they're just not laying in the beds. Like, that's got to be that whole other angle that you've got to be in. Amy Wolf, like, I'm just curious, like, so you're hearing all this that's going on at Children's, and so those earlier conversations, like, how were those kickoffs? Like, how did you help kind of ground it, for them, to help them figure out even where to kind of kick things off?
Well, like Amy Oliver said, it all started as this conversation of they were kicking off this big DE&I initiative. And they really recognized, and what I loved about them is that they understood the importance pretty much right away, how EQ plays in to it being a foundational skill. It's really important to help people, give people the tools to understand how they're feeling and managing those feelings before they get into some really heavy topics. So that was what I remember from the initial conversations. And I love they were considering just maybe doing one level of level 1, but they decided, you know what, we really want to go big with this, and we want to do our curriculum. It's called Mastering Emotional Intelligence Level 1 and Mastering Emotional Intelligence Level 2, and pairing those two together, because EQ is a skill that can be developed over time with practice. And so we really want to keep it alive in front of them. And so that's what having 2 courses does for people like Children's of Alabama.
Yeah. And that's such a great point, because it allows anybody who's using one or both programming out there to be able to figure out how does it fit in. And so, I'm curious about some of these initial reactions from some of the participants who've come through the program at Children's so far. I'll go back to you, Amy Oliver. From your perspective, and I think your perspective being from the organizational development and that learning lens, what are you hearing? What are you seeing that's allowing you to feel, right decision, good decision? What are you thinking so far?
Yeah, well, as a facilitator, there is nothing better than when you see that kind of light bulb click on for participants. And so I will say we've been really lucky that we've gotten to see that in every class that we've facilitated. And so, of course, we have evaluations, and those come in very positively, but we've heard things anecdotally about how it's impacted managers and leaders. And a couple that have stood out to me is we had somebody who said, I now see people in my office as people, not just performers in the work cycle. And I recognize their feelings impact, which is huge. And then, of course, as we stand through, difficult conversations with peers or with patients. I mean, the reality is we have difficult conversations on both sides of that, the ability to regulate and maintain your own emotions. And then, a lot of people call out that the assessment is so helpful for that self-awareness, and to really see on both sides, the self-awareness level 1 and that 360 or peer assessment in level 2 is so valuable for helping people see the gaps between how they experience themselves and then how others experience them have been hugely beneficial for our team.
Yeah, I'll bet. And anybody who's listening right now, if you have a question for whether it's one of the Amy's, one happens to work at Talent Smart and the other one happens to work at Children's, or Jessamine as well, please put them into the comments there, whether it's questions or comments. But I wanted to go over to you, Jess, because you come from a little bit of a different angle, because even though you're facilitating this program, you are also kind of right there with people who might be putting this into play, like with actual patients or with each other, doctors with nurses, et cetera. So What are some of your takeaways so far? What have you heard, or what are you seeing that's making you kind of at least being like, okay, this is a good start for us? Because it's only been a year, by the way, right? I mean,
Right.
so yeah, what's the thought? What are you feeling with that?
Well, similar to what Amy said about, just that aha moment that you see when you're facilitating the course, and how excited they are just going through the process of the class, and then on, boots on the ground, them being able to come back and say, okay, or bringing up one of the 66 strategies about how, I had to take a moment, I had to breathe, I had to do all of the things, just that self-awareness piece, I think, has been beneficial to them, just to be able to say, hey, let me see myself. And knowing that it's something that they have to practice on a regular basis. It's not something that you are going to go to the class one day and come out of the class knowing all the things that you need to do, right? It's, it's a practice. It's a learning thing. It's something that you have to do all the time. And thinking about it, being more self-aware, I think has been the biggest thing that, I've heard from staff.
Yeah, you make a really good point, because I would imagine that in the healthcare industry, that you all don't have an awful lot of time to just pause and think about self.
No.
Right? I mean, like we don't have that in our regular lives, right? In what Amy does, what I do, but when I think about, you are servant to people in such a different way as nurses, as doctors, that to have the moment to understand how powerful being self-aware can be, like that's got to be part of the big win. And part of my question for you to continue, Jess, is like ultimately, if you're, with the Jessamine wand that I know you have, like in your lab coat, right? Like ultimately, what are you hoping that the teams, that you work with, and that others that you interact with are, maybe getting about emotional intelligence?
Well, the main thing for me is that they're getting that what I do and what I say affects other people.
Yeah.
How I respond to people affects those people. So again, being self-aware, if nothing else, if you can't do any of the other things, be self-aware about you. We were talking last week, and we were talking about how nurses eat their young. When the older nurses, they vet the younger nurses, but that wasn't really beneficial for the new nurse to come in and have to be vetted, because, you're going to get in where you fit in type situation. But how important it is for you to connect with those people on a different level, because they're, you're teaching them, and then they're going to deal with patients. So you need them to be able to model those behaviors. And so that's one of the big things too, is me being, I feel, a mentor to people, is modeling the behaviors you want to see. So in that they need to be modeling those behaviors that they want to see others coming behind them model when they're dealing with patients and families.
Yeah, I think that's just so powerful as well. And for those of you who are listening in, maybe you haven't really even know the model of emotional intelligence. So there are 4 core skills, and Amy Wolf said it really well earlier, is that they actually are skills that you can improve. 2 of them are personal competences, that's self-awareness and self-management. So Jess has been talking about the self-awareness one being such a powerful piece. But then you have the other 2 that are social competences, which is social awareness and relationship management. And they each are just so powerful in their own right. But they also are always working together. I always find it interesting when some people say, I'm not sure what made me more self-aware. And it might be because I'm more socially aware of what I need to be self-aware of, right? And so that's where they're connecting with each other all the time. Amy, Oliver, for you, your magic wand, because you have all of OD, like, what are you hoping? It's 1 year in. And so I know this is still, in that kind of beginning stages, but what are you kind of hoping 2024 looks like, and even moving past?
Yeah. So, I think we see this really as foundational, and are really excited. Another kind of project that we were working on is that we realized the organization really didn't have a foundational leadership philosophy. We had organizational values, but we didn't have leadership values. We didn't have ways to say, this is how we expect you to lead around here. And so, and in that gap, we got a variety of performances, right? Because we had not made the path clear. And so we have started that process. We have defined some values and are working on rolling those out across our organization. And one of those values is empathy. And so as we help managers grow in their empathy and operationalize empathy, all of our leaders across the organization will be taking emotional intelligence level 2 with that peer or 360 assessment, so that we'll be able to really provide support to people that need it, some learning opportunities to people that need it. And we're really, really excited about that. So that's going to roll out slow. Nothing happens quickly in healthcare because you can't take people.
Right.
But we're really excited for what that looks like. And we started in a really organic way. We kind of started in 2023 with the folks who were already interested and already kind of engaged, and then let the buzz around that grow in a natural way, so that now people are asking for it and scrambling for it. And so we kind of built up that interest and that need through this much more organic way, so that now when we roll it out across the organization, there's already that buy-in.
That's so great. And I think that's just really is how Amy Wolf was talking about, like, how do you bring it in? Like, it's, I think that where some of the challenges come from is when somebody says, we're bringing EQ, and like we drop it and we say, and this is the answer. Like, it's never the answer, right? It's always like, how is it part of? So I think what you guys are working on is great. I'm gonna get to Amy Wolf in a second, but I want all of us to think about this great question that Will asked in the questions over here. What strategies does this team do to keep the practice of EQ alive for past participants? Given the fast pace of healthcare professionals, I can imagine it's not easy to keep these skills constantly top of mind. So I'm going to leave that as an open question for Justman and Amy O for a second here, because I think that's great. And thanks for the question, Will, because really it's so true. It's kind of like, okay, I came to the class and now I have to run, and maybe I've got a bunch of patients and I'm working a couple of, I would imagine, long days. And now I have to think about, how do I get back to working on my EQ, right? But anything that comes top of mind to either one of you?
I have a few thoughts.
Please.
The first is that, that's always the challenge from our end in learning and development. I describe the classroom as we light the match, and then it's on the participants to turn that to a candle, right? So that the flame learns a little longer. So some things that are great are the program itself involves a 6-month retest. So if they take a self-assessment 6 months later, they can retest. That's part of the package, so that they can work on the skills. But then I think a lot of it is we deliver it in cohorts and encourage people to get learning partners and accountability partners and to step in. We also deliver it in contact teams, which is really helpful for that continued learning and accountability piece of it. And then, a big part of this work and what's challenging is that it's really internal work. It's not stuff that you can just externally kind of pluck and apply. It really has to be inside you. And so, it is hard in our work environment and our speed and pace of work, that if you're trying to use it as just an external fix, it probably will not stick, because there's just not enough time. So we really focus on that internal application, get it inside you, so that you don't have to think what's the strategy. You're just using the strategy. I don't know if that's helpful, but.
And I think too, the cohort part of that is very important, because even, us going through the training together, we've developed a relationship just from that. And so it's like this elitist group that you're in, because you did the EQ training, so I think just building on those cohorts, helping each other, even if it's spending time with each other, doing lunch with each other, talking through what that looks like, and how have you implemented this in your day-to-day, what have you seen, how has that made you a better person, by being in the class and by implementing some of the tools that were given to you during the class. Cohorts, I think, are a great way to kind of connect and keep that forefront in your mind about what you learned and what you need to do to grow.
I love that. I think you're so right. I'm working with a group right now that has a cohort, and it kind of puts it on not just one person, it puts it on a group together. Amy, what about for you? Like, how does all what you're hearing here, how's it align with some of the other healthcare organizations that we work with? Because I'm sure that you're able to help others with what is working and not working within those organizations.
Yeah, well, what I love what the folks at Children's of Alabama are doing is they're connecting it back to their leadership competencies. Did you catch that, what Amy said? And that's so critical, is that there has to be that alignment from the top, and they're doing the deep work now. And that's the theme I'm seeing when I talk to clients, is that, Would you believe we're 4 years post-pandemic this month? It's crazy.
I know, it's crazy.
Next month is when it really went crazy.
Right.
And so I think healthcare organizations are kind of having this moment where they can go, okay, and you know, they're in more strategic planning mode. They're out of crisis mode. They're more in strategic planning, and so they're able to go, okay, what are our leadership competencies? Do these apply anymore? Do we need to adjust them? Do we need to change them? And then they can seek out companies like us to help them build their training programs. So. Yeah. So I'm seeing a lot of this. There's definitely a movement happening across the country right now in recognizing that emotional intelligence is really going to help both with patient care, career satisfaction, and with the overall outcomes that you're looking for.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because I've worked with several other of our healthcare organizations, and I found I joined our company right in the middle of the pandemic in 2020. And nobody was really able to pause to do training, like rightfully so, because everybody was so overwhelmed. But as people started coming out, you know, like a year and a half or so later, I still found at first that the position people were in, it's like, oh my gosh, we're behind. We got to get this going. But where I see organizations in this past year has been, we've taken a breath now. And we're able to now figure out this is where this fits. And instead of like spinning their wheels, so it kind of seems like it's taken a nicer journey now to do exactly what you guys are doing at Children's of Alabama, because I think that's so brilliant to be able to say, how does this fit for everybody? And it's not just for a couple people. Like I love that you said that your leaders are all going to go through doing like a 360 type of an assessment to help them understand the perception of others. Like, and not just be a handful of those people, right? Like that's kind of a brilliant piece of the puzzle. Would love to know, and Justin, you started talking about this before, but working on your own emotional intelligence, right? Because as you go through any sort of our class, and especially since the two of you and the other 4 women came through and were certified, you come out of there as a participant and you're working on your own. So Amy Oliver, I'm going to ask you first, when you take a minute to look at where you were and where a little over a year later you are with your EQ, how would you assess yourself right now?
Oh, goodness. I mean, there's so much.
Is your husband watching right now? He's going to hold you to the fire on this, right?
I'm gonna say, if there's an Adam Oliver on, he can just not comment right now. No, I think there's always room to grow. And I think when you're aware, you're kind of more cognizant of where there's room to grow and where there's things. I will say, I don't know if this is like specifically a strategy or an Amy interpretation of a strategy, but one of the things that I have really started to try to implement both at work and at home is what I'm calling the most generous interpretation. So if someone is rude to me, what's the most generous interpretation of that, rather than, well, they hate me or they're just a rude person. Maybe they're having a hard day, or maybe they just got off the phone with someone that screamed at them. And that question has allowed me to put enough of a pause in my reactions. And sometimes the most generous interpretation isn't the right one. Sometimes I'm being too generous, but that question is more about checking me and my reactions than really about them. So that has been a tool that I have really been very thoughtful of using and pulling out in those moments when I feel myself reacting to when I feel like someone's mistreated me. Yeah,
that's good. Well, and self-management, especially in that case, can be the toughest thing because it feels much better to lash back, right? Absolutely. But I love that interpretation of like, how do I see that? Because you can later on figure it out, right? But in the moment, How about for you, Jessamine?
I would have to say that I think the biggest thing about the course in general is that it was heavy. I found a lot of stuff out about myself that I did. I mean, that I really just didn't, take pause to think about, but if nothing else, it has really made me more self-aware. Although I thought I was pretty self-aware, but it makes me even more self-aware. And then, being in a position as a leader, using that empathy more, knowing that everybody's a person. Everybody has something. that they're living through and they're dealing with. And just because they come to work every day doesn't mean that when they get here, it's all, Children's of Alabama and all the things that we have going on. It's things that come along with them from their personal lives. So just being more empathetic, taking opportunities to pull people to the side and make sure that I understand what they're saying and how they're feeling, and being able to process that. And I thought I always was that, because I feel like I'm a servant leader at heart, but at the same time, it did allow me to be able to engage with them more and be able to take that empathy or empathetic piece further than I did initially. So I feel like it has been a great year, and excited about doing more, teaching more, and then just sharing the experiences after they've had the course and what that looks like for them on the day-to-day.
Yeah, and that's such the social awareness component of EQ is you acknowledging the fact that there's more below the surface than anybody's walking into the hospital telling you, and it's something's up. Let me pull them to the side. I just ask, hey, everything cool? But that in the role you're in, I would imagine that's so powerful for somebody to have. Nurse Jessamine Smith want to make sure that they're okay, right? I mean, and I think that's the part that sometimes we forget is like anybody who's just saying, everything good? Anything I can do? It's going to be a powerful thing if you have a tough day going on. And that's the magic, I think, of EQ is it just reminds us that we have to do that sometimes.
Right.
Yeah. I want to make sure I don't miss this one question. I think, Val, I'm not sure if you all, Amy and Jessamine, have just done this in person at Children's, but Emily asked the question from a logistics perspective. Did you find one delivery modality more effective for your organization? And, and as far as timing, anything that you would share from your perspective? Thank you, Emily, for that question.
Yeah, we, post-pandemic, our people were over Zoom. They just didn't want to do any virtual anything. I think our cups were just full. So we have, to my knowledge, predominantly only delivered this in person up to this point. Part of that is just the place our organization is in. We do offer it in different time ways. And so we have a full day option. We have a 4-hour option. We have a 3-hour option. Obviously, we can also break up that full day into 2 half days and so the content is flexible in that way. And we have used all of them. Obviously, we're an organization of 5,000 people, tons of different teams with tons of different needs. It's much easier for my finance team to dedicate a whole day than it is for my ER nurses. It just can't work that way. So we are used to being pretty flexible with our content in terms of timing.
Yeah, that's great.
So we have delivered almost everything in person, but in almost every time span that's available to us. So that's how we've done it. We're not opposed to virtual delivery. It's just our people haven't been very open to that.
Yeah. I said, thank you for that question as well. So wondering what's next for you guys, and Amy, I'll go back to you. I know you started talking a little bit about kind of connecting it to your leadership values and all, but what are you seeing? Anything else you want to add about what you see is next for your journey here for Children's?
Yeah, we were already pretty convinced and pretty sure that this was important foundational work. And I don't know whether it's confirmation bias or not, but with each class that we facilitate, we become more and more sure that this is not optional. This is not secondary. This is the work. And we're a service organization, and I say all the time, there's not a single job across our organization where someone works in a closet all by themselves and never has to talk to anybody else. That we just don't have those things here. And so, and especially as it relates to our mission, caring for kids who are in need, some who are walking through incredibly difficult diagnoses and treatments, their parents. I mean, you think about the sheer amount of emotion a parent brings into some of those situations. It's one thing to do the fear of a surgery on an adult, and it's another thing entirely the fear of a surgery on a child, and so meeting people in those moments with empathy, with care, seeing them as people who matter, knowing that emotions impact their care and their healing. We know that. And so I think it's continuing to embed this even further and deeper into the culture of the organization is only going to have positive benefits and outcomes for us. And, there are logistical challenges to that. Like I said, I can't, bring the whole organization around the table one day and get this out. But really being organic and getting those ideas and concepts out. And then that continued learning and continued accountability is really important to us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I know that always, and when I worked in the corporate world, I, as an L&D professional, I thought something was a great idea, and then I brought it to the masses, right? And they're like, I don't know, David. So I wondered, like, for Jess, as you think about, there's probably people that are out there listening to us now or on the recording and that are saying, I don't know if the people in my healthcare organization would buy into this. You're somebody who probably they needed to hear, or at least see in your face that, like, yeah, this could be something good. Like, what would you say to healthcare professionals that are maybe borderline even wondering if EQ is something that could be a helpful solution to them?
Yeah, like Amy said too, we have patients that come here and, adults are one thing, but dealing with children and having parents who have their own layer of anxiety, understandably so, we have to be prepared to care for not only those children, but for their parents too. Knowing that they come with so many different emotions and feelings and thoughts, and knowing how to be able to be empathetic, like we said, bringing them back down to a level of saying, hey, I get it's hard. This is hard. And I know it's hard, but how can I help you make this easier for you? And so just knowing that those are our customers, so ultimately we're here to serve them. And so we have to be able to serve them in a way that works for them. We can't assume that just because this is how I get information or how I receive information is the same way that somebody else receives information. We want it to be the best experience in the worst situation, so they're often in very bad situations, but it's how we present it to them and meet them at whatever level wherever they are, to ensure that they have that experience, because ultimately they are our customers. And so we want to, if we want to have those satisfaction scores that we all seek, it takes something different than what we've always done to accomplish that goal. So EQ to me is a very wonderful segue to that, to be able to say, hey, this is how we can help our staff support the masses of people that we serve every single day.
Yeah, thank you. I love that. Yeah, I love that approach.
Can I piggyback, David?
Please.
So I think one thing that we see, and I don't think this is unique to us, and Justman, I would love to hear your thoughts too, is a lot of people join our organization with a ton of compassion. Of course, that's what drives you to do our work. But often that compassion erodes over time. Because the work is hard. And additionally, when you've got one parent screaming because their kid has a fever, and you've got another parent screaming because their kid is diagnosed with cancer, it's really hard to have compassion for the family with the fever. And yet the family with the fever does not need to hear, well, really, you're pretty lucky because down the hall, they just found out they have cancer, right? So it's for us, I think it's a way to kind of remind and have a touchstone of what compassion for all looks like, and to get back to that touchstone of every person you interact with is an individual person.
Right.
And so, it might not be a big deal in your work day, but it's a very big deal to them in this moment.
Right.
And so I think that self-awareness, and that has been a huge piece on the clinical application side, interacting with patients and families, that has been a big win for us. Is like, I'm going to meet this family with all of the care and empathy that I have, knowing this is not as big of a deal as they feel it is. Right.
There's different levels. I mean, and really just being able to identify where they fit, what level are they on at that moment. And so identifying that, and even dealing with peer-to-peer, like nurse to physician, physician to nurse, knowing how to, we have different levels. Providers are doing what providers do, nurses are doing what nurses do, but then there's a way for us to be able to get our our communication on a level where we're able to respect each other in the roles that we have. The nurse can't do what a provider does, and a provider can't do what a nurse does necessarily. So from peer to peer, that's important, and for the external customers that we deal with as well. So we're customers to each other, because we're all people and we all deserve that same level of respect and same level of empathy that we want for our patients and for our parents and all of those things.
Yeah, wow, nicely said, both of you. Thank you. I mean, Amy, I think that they kind of just did your job as far as like, what else would you want to say to anybody who's thinking about bringing EQ into the healthcare organization? But before you do, I want to ask our producer, we're going to actually share with everybody a great tool. It's going to be putting in our comment section. Please download for yourself. It's called the Case for EQ in Healthcare. And I think that if you're part of healthcare, it's a great opportunity to take a look to say, might this be something to add into ours? But Amy, what else would you say to everybody?
I mean, I think honestly, it comes down to if you're in a healthcare organization and you're not yet offering some sort of emotional intelligence training in some way, you're already behind the 8 ball. And so, but the problem with that is that there's a lot of ineffective trainings out there. And that's the point of all this. We need it to be, it needs to stick. It needs to lead to real behavior change. And that's what we feel we're really good at TeleSmart EQ. We have proven and practical approaches that give people the tools and the resources to keep the learning alive after they do their live session. So that's what it's all about. It's about practicing over time, keeping it in their daily flow. And we would love to have a conversation with anybody. I mean, that's what I do all day long. If anybody wants to reach out to me, I know they're going to put my email address in the chat. Would just love to hear what you are developing at your organization, and we could recommend some solutions for you if you want.
Yeah, appreciate that. Yeah, we're going to add Amy's. We're also going to add the other Amy's from Children's of Alabama. I mean, if you're interested in finding out more about their amazing hospital, please reach out to Amy. She'll get you with the right people as well. I worked there for a week with them, and I loved working with the energy and the culture that was there. Ladies, great conversation. Thank you for your perspectives.
Thank you.
Really appreciate having you all here. And both Amy and Justin, please tell the rest of the team, Alice, Erica, Wanda, and Jan, I send my best. We really had such a great time out there. And I want to remind everybody, just like Amy Wolf said, just to have a conversation, and you just want to find out what is it that we provide. We do provide the solution to solutions, and it's all application. That's the nice thing. And I've been in learning and development for over 2 decades, and it is always important for me that there has to be a takeaway of like, what am I doing with what I just learned? If I just learn it but don't know what to do with anything with it, it's not helpful. And that's what you're going to get if you're interested in any of the programs that we have. We are global, so Amy can point you in the right direction. We've also included, like I said, all the places that if you just want to tap in and just learn a little bit more and just read about it, hit us up on our website as well. We will be back in just about a month. So this is Leap Day, by the way, ladies. Did you realize we're here on Leap Day?
Leap Day.
This will not be another date of February 29th for 4 years. But on the 28th of March, we'll be back for our next Emotional Intelligence for Your Everyday Life. It is going to be talking about emotional intelligence in the financial sector. And I know there are many of you that work in that sector, and you're like, can EQ help us? And the answer is yes. Until then, thank you all so much for tuning in. And just remember, EQ is for your everyday life. We'll see you the next time.